the best mentoring advice that's responsible for the success of Airbnb. Lessons learned journaling. What are my biggest lessons learned? What did I learn from that? And how will I use it moving forward? Do this weekly, monthly, and quarterly. Number 2, our life is meant to be examined, yes, but not examined as if we made a mistake or looking for what we did wrong. If we have made a mistake, we're wiser for it and we can learn from it moving on. Number 3, wisdom is metabolized experience, which leads to distilled compassion. The first piece of mentoring advice, the lessons learned journaling. This is going to be done on a weekly, a monthly, and a quarterly basis. And you want to distill from that time period, what were the biggest lessons you had? What did you learn from those lessons? And how are you going to use it moving forward specifically? When we do this weekly, you can then aggregate it monthly and then do a quarterly deep dive review. Doing this is going to allow you to have a catalog of your experiences and make sure you've captured everything you've learned along the way in your journey. This can be personal, professional, relationship, goal-oriented. It's really multifaceted, and it's a huge, powerful tool. The second piece of mentoring advice. Our life is meant to be examined, but not as if we made a mistake. If we did make a mistake or we did something wrong, we can learn from that and we're wiser for it, but we need to lend ourselves grace and compassion when looking back on experiences we have in life, in business, knowing that we're always growing and evolving, and there will always be areas for improvement. Number 3, wisdom is metabolized experience, which leads to distilled compassion. This is all about how are you digesting your experiences. Your wisdom is going to be the output from when you go through an experience, how it affects you, what you've learned from it, and you take away to use moving forward. That is that metabolized experience. You felt it, you lived through it, you digested it, and you've now distilled it down to a takeaway you have with compassion for yourself, compassion moving forward, knowing you may run through the same opportunity, occurrence, hurdle, and that others are also going through that as well. So the mentor-mentee relationship, you can continue and share that with others. So we're talking about with age, you get to this place of wisdom, intuition, and pattern recognition, where you have a skill from these experiences that you're able to make decisions because you've seen this before, you know this before. That's how all 3 of these tie together. How we experience what happens to us in life, what we learn from it, is what we distill down into how we're compassionate for ourselves when that situation arises again, how we're compassionate towards others who might be going through the same challenge or will be in the future, and we can lend them a hand having been there beforehand. These 3 pieces of mentoring advice tie together, and this is how I see it. So the first practice when we're talking about journaling on a weekly, a monthly, and on a quarterly basis, we're taking all the lessons that have happened to us every week, every month, every quarter, and we're understanding what were they so we don't forget them. What did we learn from them? And then specifically, how are we going to use that lesson moving forward? Because without some intention and direction, we can get lost. That practice is how we metabolize experience. So experience happens to us, we're digesting it. What does this mean for me? What am I going to take away? How am I going to move differently through my life? That's the metabolism of experience. And when we distill that down, that is where we're getting this distilled compassion for ourselves, knowing that we handled it as best we could at the time with what we were equipped with. And also compassion that there's others that are going to be going through this, and we can lend a hand and advice having been there, and we'll both be better for it. So the journaling practice and then the metabolism of the experience and the compassion go hand in hand. So that wisdom we get, which is pattern recognition, which is understanding of experience, and where that intuition, we feel the answer just pops up, that's coming from taking the time to recognize our lessons learned, knowing what we take away from them, digesting it fully, and sharing it with others. And that last piece is almost a note that ties in to the practices of both of those, which is when we're looking backwards, yes, we want to examine our lives, but not as if we made mistakes, not already assuming that. We want to examine our lives with compassion and grace, knowing we've made some mistakes. What did we do wrong? And we're going to be wiser for it moving forward. So always remembering that we want to identify the experiences and what we're learning from them while they're happening. We want to be aware that our intuition, our wisdom, is really these experiences metabolized and distilled down. And that when we're doing this, we need to give ourselves grace, and we also need to make a conscious effort to become wiser if we did something wrong. So these 3 pieces of advice from Chip Conley, really impactful for me, and it's clear to me how he was so instrumental to the success of AirBNB and being a mentor to the founders. Really great podcast. I have the link below, himself and Rich Roll, and I highly recommend you give it a listen. These are my 3 favorite takeaways. I appreciate you coming back here. If you like the content, please subscribe, leave a comment below. I'd love to know what you'd think. Until next time, this is Rob Penny, over and out.